Okay, so now these days everybody needs to we need to strengthen our faith, our trust in Hashem, bitachon, and that's today's laws in Rambam. Not asking people or professionals of the future. There's many ways even today people look at your hand, at your foot, at your this, or your that. Even though they might be right, that's not what a Jew should do. A Jew should always have just plain trust in Hashem that Hashem will do the best for him. He feels good. So in the olden days, there were many ways how people figured out the future. One of them is called Oiv. One of them is Udaini. So what's Oiv? Oiv is they take a hadas that we have in Sukkot apparently. You put spices and you light them on fire, you make a smell, and you wave it or something like that, and you get to and you say abracadabra, whatever their thing is, until you hear a voice. Apparently, you it was something that made you a little bit high. You're able to hear voices, and then you ask them, huh? Abracadabra, yeah. Abracadabra, they say it's actually from Aramaic. Abarakadabra, I'll create with my words. So an oiv is something you say with ways to know the future. There's another way of oiv. You take a skull of a person, and you do the same spices, and you talk to the skull until a voice comes from your hip or something.
Probably whatever spices are.
Armpit, what? Armpit, yes. What's a Udaini? Udaini, you take a bone of a bird called Udaini, in Hebrew. You put it in your mouth, and then you burn the spices or this plant till you fall on the ground like a nut, until you start saying the future. These are all different ways of how they see the future. Okay, so that's one concept of these prohibitions. If you do them, it's a big sin. It's considered like idol worship, which means it's the punishment of skila. Then there's another idol worship called Maila, which is you make two fires on two sides, and then you give your kids to the priest. Then you take your kids from the priest. They give you permission. You take them by their feet, and you put them through the two fires. Now you don't burn them; you just put them through the two fires. That's the Maila. That's a prohibition, a sin for itself. It's a certain type of idol worship. And the Rambam just says you have to do every single step of these things to get to do the sin. Which means you have to give it to the priest, you have to give it back to you, and you have to go through the two fires. But it has to be. Now, it has to be specifically your children. It can't be your brother, it can't be your sister, it can't be your mother. Even though Rabbi Akiva said that he saw a guy give his father to sacrifice his father, but in this case, this Maila specifically has to be children. The next avera, the next sin there's many sins of Avodah Zarah. The next sin is making a Mitzvah. Mitzvah is, even though the others, our forefathers made a Mitzvah for Hashem from the time of giving you the Torah, it became a prohibition to make a Mitzvah. Mitzvah is that you take a rock and whatever you put on the rock, you animals, and you sacrifice it, even if it's Hashem, it's an Avera. Every single Mizbeach which the Jews make has to be made out of a few rocks. If it's out of one rock, it's considered a Mitzvah, which is an Avera, sin. The next prohibition, the next sin is if somebody makes a.
Isn't a matzeva like a stone on people's graves?
No, that is also called a matzeva, but it's not the matzeva we're talking about. A matzeva, someone just asked on a grave, it's called a matzeva. Yes, you can make a matzeva. You can't put sacrifice in it. You can't bow down in front of it. It's not. Same too. The way that idol worshippers used to one of the ways of service was. One of the ways of the idol worship was to put a floor of stones, and everybody should lay down, face on the ground, arms spread out, legs spread out. That was the way of serving. That's the real way of, when it says in Torah bowing down, shtachava, it means flat. And these days, the Arabs, they bow down with their tachas up, right? But the way that real bowing down is flat. So the prohibition is laying down flat on the ground of bricks. Therefore, in the show where there's bricks, you're meant to put a sheet between your head and the floor.
We do it all the time.
But it's not bricks. So first of all, it's not bricks. Second of all, If you have bricks, and you don't have a sheet, you should put your head sideways. Your forehead should not hit the floor. There's one place in the world that you're allowed to bow down on bricks, and that's in the Beis Hamikdash. In the Beis Hamikdash, it says in the Torah, "Ba'artzachem," in your land you should not lay down on bricks. But in the Beis Hamikdash, you're allowed to lay down on bricks, and that's what they did. All the Jews laid down on the floor, face in front of Hashem, and the miracle was that it was stuffy, it was packed. The temple wasn't a big room; it was packed with Jews, like sardines. As soon as they wanted to bow down, became room. There was enough room for all the Jews to bow down. The next prohibition is planting a tree near the altar. It is because that was the custom of the idol worships. It's an avera to plant a tree near the altar, and the altar, that means mizbeach, that they sacrifice animals for Hashem. And the rabbis pulled that further, that you can't build anything made out of wood in the temple. The temple was only bricks, and they couldn't build anything with wood. No, so talking about no, we mean achsadra means achsadra means a room made out of wood. Today's Friday because we want to learn tomorrow, so we're going to learn it right now. There is a mitzvah to destroy every single idol in Israel. I don't know if they can do this today, but in the times of the temple, it was a mitzvah to destroy every idol. The idols which exist in India and Thailand, all these places, it's not a mitzvah. If you buy a house with idols, you have to destroy the idols, obviously, like Avram did. If you own it, you have to destroy it, but you don't need to run after it. But in Israel, there's a mitzvah, there should not be one idol. And therefore, there's a bracha we say actually in a place there used to be idols in Israel.
Destroy all the church.
Let's not talk about it.
Wow.
Every single thing that has a connection to idols, every single thing, literally, you can't have any enjoyment from it. Zero. Misha asked me about working for a church. Enjoyment from any, and you have to ask a rabbi that question. But in general, they say you're allowed to sell crosses because it's jewelry, it's not an idol. But in general, having any enjoyment from anything, from food that went in there, from anything that was brought as a service to idol, it says lo yiyibak biyadcha.
Right, but the other thing that was Christianity, the question is
Yeah, I mentioned you have to ask your rabbi because it's not clear, especially the different groups in Christianity, what they believe. But in general, it says you can't have anything in your hands that has a remnant, a drop, anything that comes from idols. For example, in India, there's cows that they think are idols. So maybe if they do something to the cow, which is out of service, what? Still, yeah. And today in India also, you said that if you kill an elephant, all India goes crazy.
no, but that's because they're all in danger.
Yeah, okay, if you say so. And even the waste that comes out of the animal that was served for Avodah Zarah is asur, and therefore, if you see in the olden days, leather was very very common thing people bought and sell. And if you find a hole near the heart, in those days, the way they used to kill the animal, they used to make the Jews are a little bit merciful, so they kill in the way that's not so painful. The way the guy used to do it, they used to go to the heart, pull the heart out. That's how they kill the animal. It's very painful, but if you see a wool leather with a hole by the heart, it's a sign to stay away from it. That's what the Rambam says.
How do you know? You buy leather jacket. How do you know?
No, if you don't see, you don't see. What is the difference of idol which a Jew makes and an idol which a non-Jew makes? It's a very deep concept in Kabbalah. We'll just see the law. The difference is that a idol of a non-Jew, as soon as he makes it, it's considered an idol. He doesn't need to bow down to it. Anything he makes, if he makes a statue, idol. A Jew, until he actually bows down, we think, no, he's not going to really serve it. He's just making it for a design. He's not going to serve it. But once he does serve it, it's the opposite. A non-Jew, if he decides, you know what, this idol is a joke, I prayed it, it didn't help me, he breaks it. It becomes not an idol anymore. But if a Jew makes an idol, it's impossible for him to take it out of being an idol. He can do whatever he wants. It doesn't help. Interesting point is, if somebody makes money off idols, has an idol shop like the.
Am I allowed to sell the coin?
You're not allowed to make it. But if someone makes it, he can keep the money. The money is his. But like we said before, there's an avera to make idols for somebody else or have idols. Now it's a sin even to make a statue of a human being. But it's not so extreme, which means you can buy.
What if it's a basketball player?
You can
don't pray for
No,
him?
you can't.
You don't pray for him.
It
Just
doesn't make a difference.
You know the one that on the.
It does make a difference.
You know the bubble.
The bubble, I don't know. I don't know if it's a statue, but it's not. But if it's out of brick, if it's out of metal, it's a problem. If it's plastic, then I think it's fine. You're allowed to make money off it. So you can't make it, but if you can, maybe you can do business with it.
Of course.
What happens? Like he says, we're Jewish. What happens if you find a bunch of metal and you see broken parts that might be parts of a idol? That's fine. But if you find a piece that you know for sure can be an idol, even if it's a half, you don't say, "Oh, he broke it." You use chazaka. You say you can't touch it. What happens if you have a idol that gets mixed? Gets broken up for some reason, and it gets mixed into thousands of pieces of metal. Throw them all in the garbage. In this case of an idol, if it's fake, if this falls into something else, then that other one is fine. But the first group of suffix, and even if you take wood from a shera, from a tree of an idol, and you cook it food with a one little match, you can't eat the food. Now, but it's not as extreme. If that bread falls into another hundreds of loaves of bread, you can't take the money from that bread. You have to throw it out. The money that you made from that bread. But in general, you can't. If you may take one string and you sew it into clothes, it's throughout the whole shirt. If you don't know which string it is, take it out. You can't even have pleasure from the ashes of the Avodah Zarah. If you burnt an Avodah Zarah, you upset it, you don't believe in it, you burnt it, you can't even have pleasure from the ashes. If a tree, one of the Avodah Zarah, one of the idols they had in those days was a tree. They used to plant it and bow down to this tree. So what happens to the birds on the tree? So if no, not Christmas, they actually served it. Maybe in the older days. Yeah. They say the source of Christmas trees is this Asherah. So the chicks on the tree, if they're too small to fly, you can't take them. You can't enjoy them. You can't eat them, whatever. But if it's big enough to fly, so it's not connected to the tree. But the nest is always fine because the rule is that the bird takes branches from other trees, not from the tree that even puts the nest. If he sees, it goes through the rules. In the olden days, there was a box. The way they used to have a box in front of the idol, that's where they did the services. So in that box, anything that's there, you can't enjoy. But if it's around, if it looks like it's brought as a service, then you can enjoy it. But not if it's not, then you could use it. For example, there was an idol that they used to stone. That's how they had the service to the idol. So if they saw a stone that looked like, you never know, that stone might have been thrown to the idol, you can't enjoy that. You can't enjoy that stone. You can't use it for your house. You can use it to throw it at your friend, right? But if it's in the box, no matter what, you can't use it. Now in the olden days, this is very complicated because they had statues everywhere. So for example, we already discussed, if you have statues in the bathroom or in the bathhouse, probably they're not made there out of beauty. The bathhouse in the olden days wasn't like take a bath. It was like a whole culture. You went once a week for a half a day, and there was, I don't know, massages there, I'm sure, whatever. It was a whole process. So it was very fancy. It wasn't like today also people spend millions of dollars in the bathroom, but in those days it was one of the big cultural places. So, it's public. It was a sauna maybe today. I'm not sure what it was. So in those places you could even though there's idols there, you could go there. Now it used to be that there was saunas or merkats, there was these bathhouses connected to the church. How do you call it? A place where they serve idols. So if it only belongs to the church, you're only allowed to go there for free and not say thank you. No, you can't. But if other people owned it, it was like 50-50, then you could enjoy it. That could be an answer to Misha's question. He asked if you can do business with a church. So today's day and age, it could be some churches are not only owned by the church, it's also owned by a company or something. So when you're making that, maybe when you do business, you're doing business with the company, the broader company, and not with the church itself. So it could be that's a heter, that's a loophole to do business with the church. What happens if you take a knife that belongs to a avodah zarah, to idols, and you slaughter an animal with it? Mutter, you could use the animal, because as long as you're destroying, you're not misakin, you're not doing something productive. So apparently a live animal is more profitable than a dead animal, so therefore you could eat that animal. But if the animal was dying anyways, then you can't, because you actually gained from it, because you would have died anyways. Now you shechted it, you can eat it, you slaughtered it. You can't use a knife for from idols for your meat, to cut it, because you're benefiting from it. But if you just cut it because you were bored, or because you were trying to destroy, but I don't know, for whatever reason, then you can eat the meat.
With the knife?
You can, if you were just playing, you were bored and you started messing with the meat. It's fine. It's the sin of idols is 49 sins, prohibition, 49. So it's big. We're almost going to finish right now. You're not allowed to walk under a tree, the original Christmas tree, not these today. Today it's not, it's just designed. When they actually served it, you weren't allowed to, if you were able to, you had to walk around it. You couldn't even stand in the shade of its stem. The branches you could, but the stem you were not allowed to.
But what if you're in the forest at the older trees?
No, not the pine trees. Then pine trees.
No, only the ones they planted specifically to serve. Okay, so Mashiach, whatever. Yeah, some of them I think they're usually fruit trees actually. So I don't know. He says that it's the source of the Christmas tree.
No, I'm saying that the custom, as far as I understand, like goes back to pagan roots, and then it changed a little bit. Like,
okay, everyone have a great night, and we should Mashiach will come, and we won't need to deal with any avodah zarah.
Amazing too. Everyone will want to do it.
See you tomorrow.
Choice. Be like, everyone's gonna want to get a verse.
This is also like